Hi everyone, I'm here today with well-known name, Graham Hendra, currently R&D Engineer for Haier. So, hi Graham.
Hello, how you doing?
Yeah, it's fine.
Good.
Can you tell us something about your current role, because a lot of people will know you, but just what you are doing now.
Okay, so that's pretty easy. My job is basically to make heat pumps better, or our heat pump better. So when I took this role on 6 months ago, my boss said to me, this is our product. It's a heat pump like every other heat pump you've seen, big fan on the front, compressor on the right-hand side, grey, has all the features. And he said, do you think this is the perfect heat pump? And I said, nobody's ever made the perfect heat pump. And he said, well, if you think you can do better, why don't you come and work in R&D? So my kind of role is I go around speaking to people like yourself and people who buy our equipment and installers and say, what would you like in the unit? What do you want it to do? And then the theory is I take all this, I condense this down, I pick the better ideas, go to China, speak to our developers, and hopefully they build me
Masterpiece.
a unit which people will remember me for the rest of my days. But no, so I've been doing it 6 months. It's quite the development's quite a slow process. From the day you decide you're going to make a unit to the day the unit arrives is 1.5 to 2 years. So I came in at the end of a cycle, so we are literally in the process of just launching a unit, which I was involved right at the end. So it's not my unit, but I'm very proud of it because it's got my first bit in. And it literally down to what terminals are we going to put in the unit, so that, and how some of the functions work and so on. So for the heat pump geek, it's the dream, because you go, I think if you had this function, everyone would love the unit. And I guess we'll see.
What is the thing about Haier? Because it's a big company, but not so big in terms of, let's say, heat pump, air-to-water heat pump. Geeks like you and me, we know the name, but how big is the company? How big is, let's say, this development thing? Because you said, I come to the guys and say, I need this and that.
Well, this is the funny thing. So when I took the role, I should have done more research on the internet. I didn't know how big Haier were. It turns out quite big. They turn $40 billion, not million, $1 billion a year.
So a lot of zeros.
Yeah, a lot of zeros. They make something crazy. Like someone told me 25% of all fridges in the world are made by Haier. Haier own lots of brands. It's well known. They own Candy, which is a big electronics brand in Southern Europe. They own Hoover, who everybody in the UK knows. They own some of GE in America. We own a few bits of Carrier, the CO2 division. So Haier, the company, owns lots of other people too. In the heating and cooling world, massive in the sort of Chinese and Asian markets. Been in Europe for 20 odd years, mostly in sort of Southern Europe, Spain, Italy, beginning to work their way up into the north. So, really interesting. But why Haier? Well, if I'm honest, worked with a load of brands over the years.
Yeah, you have a wide area of experience.
Yeah, and
Koreans, Japanese, you name it.
No criticism of them, but I've been internationally ignored for 35 years. And Haier said, we'll listen to you. And I thought, well, that's new. And they do, it's kind of weird. I go to China, I speak to these development guys, I speak to developers all day, every day. Literally the guy who says, this is how we will write the code. Again, I thought there would be like 4 guys in a shed, in somewhere in
a garage.
In a garage. Turns out it's a little bit bigger than the shed. So the division I work with is the commercial air conditioning division, which has its own skyscraper. I think it's 20-something stories high. In that building, you have all the admin people and the sales team and so on, and they have a separate testing building for R&D, as you do, which I think is, again, about 15, 16 stories high. I have photos of it. I've been in it. 650 people work in that building.
In R&D?
Yeah, for heating and cooling. So turns out it's quite a big team. and they know what they're doing. So that's covering everything from commercial air conditioning, all sorts of things. So they're not all working in heat pumps. But so there's a lot of expertise, a lot of people who know kind of compressor experts and so on. And yeah, my job is to say to them, why don't we try some new things? So as we all know, we get excited in heat pumps because someone paints one a different colour. That's it. Or someone says, hey, we got some frilly fan blades, and everyone goes, oh my God, that's game changing. And you go, it's not game changing, is it? It's a box that makes hot water. So I don't think you're going to see some octagonal purple unit coming out of us for a while. I've got a feeling the next units we'll make will kind of have a fan on the front, the compressor on the right. Might be quite fun to put the compressor on the left just for fun. People will say,
for left-handed people.
Yeah, people will go, this is witchcraft. The compressor on the wrong side. But one of the things that obviously most people know is you are limited by certain things, right? So if you want your unit to be quiet, it has to be big, because if it's big, you move the air through it slowly. If you want it to be efficient, you need a big coil.
Physics.
Yeah, and you need to move the fan fast. So you can't have efficient and quiet and small. So everyone says, when I say, what do you want? They get really simple, Graham. 200 euro heat pump, 16 kilowatt, 2 amp power supply, silent,
small,
120 degree outlet temperature next week. And I'm like, thank you for setting me a challenge. None of those things are going to happen. The really big changes that I can make are, how does it work? How does it, what does it do? And I have always said this technology is miles too complicated.
Especially for average guys. Even for us, it's complicated.
Yeah, I mean...
Why you need so much complication?
It's because we are still in the phase of the having every functions is good. Yeah, so 5 years ago you bought a television and you got a remote controller which is kind of this long with 50 buttons on, none of which you used, and we thought that was a good idea. And now when you buy a TV, you get a little slim controller which you use with on, off, up, down and change channel, and the other controller you throw away. And we have yet to reach the point in heat pumps where you go, literally nobody uses these functions, let's turn them off, disable them and so on. So every heat pump has got 20, 30, 40 terminals, so you can connect mythical pieces of equipment that no one will ever connect to them.
And control is usually good.
Yeah, and it is funny how, I've lots of experience with other brands over the years, and people say, oh, this function doesn't work. And you go, but the unit's been available for 6 years, but nobody used it, so nobody knew. So I would like to simplify. I don't know how easy that will be, and there are some moves. So we're doing a little thing at the moment where our unit has a outdoor heat pump and an indoor wiring centre, kind of like a lot of them do. But we're doing a simplified version where you have a mini wiring centre in the outdoor unit with much fewer functions. And if I'm right, everyone will buy the mini controller and nobody will buy the big one. So we'll see. I'll state it for the record today that I think simple will win, but I may be completely wrong, and I'll come back and eat my hat.
How hard is for R&D engineers to change something? For example, you said, defrost control. We all know it's not properly managed sometimes. You need to change this and that. How reactive are they?
So in theory, I could ring up a guy now and say, I need you to change the way defrost works, and he will sit at his laptop and rewrite it. And that's kind of what they can do. There are queues, so these guys are busy, so they may say, I cannot look at that for 1 month or 2 months and so on. But the work is quite simple for them, not for me, but it may be a day's work. But you can't just then go send that to every unit on, we do these over-the-air upgrades like you get on your telly and so on. They need to test, so they'll write the code, then they'll send it to the test room. So they have, there are many test rooms. I'm not allowed to tell you how many, but there's a lot. And they will plug a unit in, test it, run it through all the tests and so on. So in theory, you could upgrade the software and it'd be done by tomorrow morning. In practice, it actually takes a couple of months of testing, and because you have to go through and do 100 hours of testing at -2 and let it defrost and check it and so on. And these test rooms have essentially sensors everywhere, and so it's not just a guy with a thermometer stood in there in a coat watching it. There's everything's measured. And you might get 1,000 data points back, and they have to look at it. So the unit doesn't have 1,000 data points, but they measure it. I mean, one of the rooms that I went in, they measure the temperature in the room. So what? But they don't measure it like you or I would measure it. The room is probably 10 meters by 10 meters by 4 meters high, and they have a temperature sensor every direction, every 300 millimeters.
300.
So you walk in and there is these cables hanging from the roof, and there is a sensor every 300 millimeters, and they're 300 by 300. So it's like a cube of 300 by 300, and they measure the temperature in that room and log it all. Weirdly takes a little bit of time to go through that data.
But still precision is quite good.
Yeah, but you can see how the air moves, you can see if there's pockets, and all these questions about how close can the unit be to the wall, and will it affect airflow, and all of us internet warriors go, I had a unit and I tested it and it didn't work. These guys actually have a room where they measure all of it. So do you need feet? We all guess. I could go to these guys and say, can you install a unit with no feet and tell me exactly what happens to the airflow? Well, actually, it's a good idea. I might do that.
And we are also discussing, everyone has thousands of ideas. Yeah, this is not working, this is working. But in reality, if you said now, give me a feedback, what you want, very few people will know what they want. Even if you ask me what you want, I don't know what I want. People don't know what they want.
Yeah, I think it's a bit like Netflix, isn't it? You go, you can watch any film you like. What film would you like to watch? And you go, I
30 minutes.
Know. Yeah, going, I don't know. So in a way, I suppose I'm like a sort of really bad DJ in the sense that I go, here, look, you can have anything you want, but if you don't know, some people will go, I've always wanted this feature. But most people go, I don't know what I want. This could be better, or that could be better. So what I tend to do is throw out and go, here's 15 ideas that I think might be good. And they'll go, this is rubbish, and that's not an issue. And, actually, now you've said that, I want this. So there's a lot of that in my role, that I throw ideas out, and then that gets people started. It is quite interesting, and it's interesting because I work across Europe. There's very little in the UK, but mostly in Europe.
Different markets and different ideas.
So example, in Italy, they adore a buffer vessel. Right, so they do a buffer, they heat the buffer, and the theory being that the heating system after the buffer is kind of done by someone else. We don't do that so much in the UK.
Because of the control.
Yeah, and
we cannot control this properly.
Exactly, and in Finland, they design for -32 ambient and
glycol.
No glycol.
No glycol.
They don't use light glycol. It's too thick at -32. You have to spoon it in. And so you go there and you think, these guys are working on the same machine as me, but in a totally different way. I mean, just think about that for a second. Some idiot says to you, can you tube this unit? Can you mount some brackets outside, hang the unit on the brackets and tube it up? And you go, what's the temperature? They go, it's only -25 today.
It's fine.
And they go, okay, we'll be fast. And so they have a sort of totally different way of doing things. In that scenario, the key is that you disconnect the old heating system and reconnect the new one very quickly. You can't leave it for a week. It would be a disaster. So each market has it, and it's amazing how different they are.
And they're not so obsessed with COP because -30 but cheap electricity probably.
Yeah, electricity is cheaper than the UK, and I guess it focuses the mind that if the unit goes off, you go, at least we're saving £3 a day.
But I'm in the grave.
But it's -30. So no, obviously the COP of all units at -30 is like 1.2, something like that. But like every country, it's -30 for a tiny portion, and then you have, they still run in the low temperatures for long periods. But it is really interesting in that market that the argument, do heat pumps work? Absolutely. No one, they look at you like you've got two heads. So what do you mean, do they work? It's minus 32
And
outside.
do they work on zero in the UK?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, it's something to do with geography. You know, as soon as you get
And
them to
defrost.
Finland- yeah, but they have some really interesting problems with defrost, which we don't have. If it's minus 20, minus 25 outside, but humid, the damn thing freezes up like mad. And as you're defrosting, the thing's trying to freeze again. So they run electric tray heaters to get the water away, the huge diameter drains, because at minus 25, everything freezes like mad. So yeah, it's really, I had never considered any of this, and now I have to consider this. So it's been a real education to go round. And you think that everyone wants the same thing, and they sort of do, but they have different things they want to.
And still, let's say you will not produce unit for every country. So you must have a unit which is capable of doing Finland minus 30, UK 0, Italy this, and so, okay, there are slightly changes, but generally speaking, you need to cover wide area of things.
The dream from a warehousing point of view is one unit does all.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really work when it's that extreme. So what we have is a kind of what we call a sort of mid-band unit. So this is kind of UK, Netherlands, Germany, Poland, down France and so on. That sort of middle of the band bit. And also down into southern Spain and so on. So that's one unit. Once you get into what they call Nordic regions, so anywhere below about minus 20, our European unit, it doesn't perform very well. It's not just not designed to do that because the coils aren't big enough and so on. To give you an idea, everyone knows the size of a 10 kilowatt heat pump, you know, kind of waist height and so on. In Nordic conditions, a 10 kilowatt is double fan, double height. You just need a monster evaporator. So we are developing at the moment a unit for that climate, but what it will also be is an ultra high efficiency, ultra low noise Southern European model. So it will do, because of course it's huge, so if you want a super quiet unit, we do one. It's just a Nordic unit running it, yeah.
It's a bigger one, yeah.
Yeah, so that's, so you really, I think that the idea is to try and cover it with a couple of ranges, because although you could do all of it with one, it's not going to be very good at either end.
At the end, what is, let's say, the dream for you? Probably to make heat pump as a boiler. I mean, for the price perspective and disruption perspective. So
yeah, I mean,
these two pipes.
What I want is a unit that I have always viewed my competition as combi boilers. Right? If we sell boilers, they live in the garden. Combi boilers go in the kitchen and the cupboard. We all know that you get a combi, you hang it on the wall, you put the tubes in the bottom, you fill it with water, you turn it on, and it works. There is not a single heat pump on the market that does that, despite what people say. They might turn on, but they don't work properly. You know, you have to program every one of them. You have to tell it it's got a tank. And my aim is to reduce the number of steps. My dream would be you flick the power on, and the unit goes ready to go, and you go on, and it works. It's going to take a while to get there, but I don't see why it is acceptable that you'd need to make 25 settings to the unit, tell it it's got this feature and that feature and so on.
And spend 20,000.
Yeah, and the prices, they have to come down. I don't know exactly who's making the money or why they are, but when the units leave the factory, they're obviously more expensive than the boiler, but they're not 3-4 times the cost of a boiler. So I think we are going to see a price fall over time. And if we can simplify, it means that the installers can get the units in. Maybe they can do 2 a week, not 1 a week, which means it will be less money. Because we do have to accept, if the grant ever goes, there's only so many people who'd like to spend £15,000 on a heating system.
Yes. Most of them are like, I want heating.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, the people who want to spend £15,000 have already done it. So yeah, we do need to think about the competitiveness. So yeah, what do I see in the future is simpler, easier machines, probably grey. like they are today, but just a lot easier to set up, a lot of the functions removed or hidden. This is one of the things we're looking at, is we'll hide all the functions, so the top 10 functions are there, and if you want to do crazy stuff, you can turn all
But
these
it's only a
functions
few percent of mass
Yeah.
market is like simple and basic.
Yeah, and I guess, it's the same as your car now. You get in your car and it's got some unbelievably sophisticated control system which you can go crazy on. And what do? You
Nothing.
program the seat, program the mirrors and go, well, that'll do. You never adjust it again. But if you want to, you can. So I think we'll probably go that way quite a bit. I think we're going to see a lot more of things like touchscreen type controllers, because the controllers are a bit,
Rubbish.
well, they're like calculators when I was at school. So I think we're going to see some more of that stuff, a little bit more mobile phony, in use, I hope. And yeah, just simpler wiring. I want the machine to help you a bit. So, traditionally you'd have a flow error or come up with a X1 fault code, and then you look in your manual. Who has a manual? But you look in the manual, you look up. Traditionally, you'd get an X1 error. You'd look in the manual. Who has a manual? You look it up. You ring tech support and so on. And actually, wouldn't it be nice? I mean, now it's quite common. You have got a flow error, and you go, okay, that's cool. I've got a flow error. What would be really nice if there was like a more button? It says, I recommend you try this, or I try this, or try this, or maybe even here's a link to a YouTube video, and help me a little bit so that when I'm there on a Sunday night trying to fix your unit,
It's fixed.
It's easy. So a little bit of that kind of stuff is where my first step of simple, and in time I want it to do things like auto commissioning, auto turning on functions, detecting it's got pumps and things. But that's a little down the road. Because it's quite a leap from where we are now. So you have to bring the developers with you, and they go, but no
Yes.
one does this, and you go, I know, but try it. Let's. I have a phrase that my Chinese colleagues dislike me using. They say this is very difficult to achieve, and I say, in 2027, China will put a man on the moon. That is difficult. We're doing heat.
Yeah.
So.
A lot of interesting things for you.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, if I can make them work.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
a
you
lot for having me.
coming, and thank you for explaining a little bit what is behind the curtain. Thanks. Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot.